Kia ora, everyone. It's lovely having you all tune in today, and what will be a brief kōrero, just going through a few things. I know it's quite a busy time in the quarter, and a lot of people have a lot on their plates. So we'll just go through. We have a very brief agenda. We'll start off with Go Local, Repatriation and Resource Mover with Peter Haigh. Then we have Sustainability Calculator with Roseann, and partnering at Microsoft, a partner perspective with Jarden Pedersen from Mobile Mentor. So Peter, are you in the call now?
I am indeed, yes. Awesome. Hey guys.
Hey Peter, so I'll just let you share your screen, and but we'd love to hear more about the geo-local migration and all of that stuff.
Cool, all right, I'll just do the sharing thing.
Awesome.
One there. Can you see a blue slide?
Yep. Looks good.
Awesome. Cool. All right. So, anyways, briefly, my role, I'm a tech strategist working in public sector based down here in Welly. So I work with a whole heap of government agencies who are deeply interested in our NZ North data centre region investments. And so there's been obviously lots of questions around, hey, if we've already got stuff running over in Australia or in other geos, how do we bring that back? And are you going to make that really simple for us, Microsoft? Which is a pretty reasonable question. And also, lots of customers saying, hey, if we're going to deploy more stuff over to Australia, which is where the main deployment target today, how do we bring it back? So it's both for existing workloads they want to bring home and also new workloads that they're planning to deploy before we open up the DC region here. Those are good questions. So people call this different things. There's repatriation. I don't like that term because it sort of makes it sound like if you're deploying workloads into Australia, then you're not a very patriotic person. And I think we are patriotic people, even though we're putting things over the ditch. So I like to use the term Go Local. That's sort of a term that we use internally at Microsoft for Microsoft 365 region moves or geo moves, like we did from Singapore down to Australia for everyone's Office 365 tenant. We're sort of expanding out the branding to say, look, this is everything which is about bringing things from Aussie to NZ. We're going to put it under the Go Local term. That's some context. Normally when I run through with customers, I look at sort of 3 different platforms. Today, I'm just going to really have a specific look at Azure because this is probably the gnarliest one where the most complexity exists. Picture of containers, there we go. So this is kind of a summary slide here that I put in terms of the things you need to know. So we have a tool, and this has only been released in March this year. So up until this point in time, if you were going to do region moves or geo moves, it was really a case of quite a lot of planning and manual work, and it still is quite a lot of planning and work. But what we've really heard from customers and partners as well is, look, you've got to provide some tooling to simplify this, guys. It shouldn't be this difficult. So that's why we've put this Azure Resource Mover tool into development, got our first release that happened back in March, and we've got really quite a healthy roadmap, which I'll flick through. It is a roadmap, so things can sort of flex and move in and out, but it shows you kind of the intended scope of functionality within the tool. It's also important to note where you've got customers with more than 500 Azure resources. We do provide an unusual thing called a product group buddy, and that's just someone from the Azure product group customer experience team side of things who will be available to the customer as they work through and move things between regions, between geos, because we realize, for those larger environments, this can be a bit of a scary thing, and we need to provide some rapid support. And it's also recognition that within Resource Mover, there's a good number of services which are supported, but there's even more that aren't, right? So that's where we provide that guidance and wraparound support to say, well, okay, for these other resources, here's how you go about either moving them or redeploying them. The other side of things is that, obviously, we've got the Aussie geo, and then we have the NZ geo, which is a single region geo. And if you're going to move things between those, That can be, and I think you're probably familiar that if you're moving stuff into Azure, there's no traffic costs. If you're pulling stuff out of Azure, there are traffic costs. There's egress traffic costs. And if you've got lots of traffic, that can mount up and be quite substantial potentially. So the key thing is I've had a number of customers say, hey, I've got 2 petabytes of stuff I'm looking to move into Azure in Australia. Is that going to cost me a bunch of money to move it back to NZ? And the answer is maybe. It all depends on your networking. So for customers with large footprints, so hundreds of terabytes, or we might be petabytes, there's a number of those. This is where the magic source is ExpressRoute. And if you want to zero rate the traffic between the geos, use ExpressRoute Premium with unlimited data. And I've just chucked in, I haven't looked at these prices for a while. This is what they were when I looked at it. If you've got a 200 meg link, that's about 4K a month, which is a reasonably chunky bit of cash. If you want a 1 gig link, that's 15.5K per month. So that's kind of the secret to moving large footprints between the geos. There's some detail here which I think is really quite important to understand. It's a lot easier to beef up a customer's link to suit that zero rate traffic migration of content than it is to bring it back down afterwards, which is kind of annoying, but it is what it is. So that's where what you need to, you can say, hey, it's easy to go dial it up to suit. But when we want to dial it back down after the migration has been completed, you're probably going to end up having to redeploy the circuit. So this is where you're going to have to do some planning and manage this through carefully to actually sort of bring the cost model back down for the customer after the migration is finished. Right, so that's a really important piece of detail, and I'm sorry that it's it's easier to harder to dial down than it is to dial up. I don't know why it's like that, but it's a key point to be aware of. Anyway, cool. Yeah, it's a bit annoying. Get rid of that. Right, so just having a quick look at Resource Mover itself. And I think the key thing in here is, there's a number of different scenarios. It could be moving things between regions. It could be moving things between geos. Or it could be if you're actually wanting to actually shut down the use of a region. Say, for example, you've got a bunch of workloads deployed in the US and you're going, actually, we want to pull out of there, or it could be we want to pull things out of Hong Kong, for example. Right, so these are the objectives. It's to make actually moving resources and environments much easier. And it's also about providing a consistent experience regardless of the Azure services that are involved, because at the moment to move things, you've got to do things in quite different ways. So, the devil's in the detail, and there's lots of detail. And also to say, well, look, if we're going to move these things in a different order, are we going to break stuff? Right, so having built-in dependency analysis, because obviously everything's running in our place, we can see where the traffic's flowing, what's talking to what. So we should be reflecting that in the tool to simplify your deployment and migration planning. And also key thing here, if you're familiar with things like Azure Site Recovery or good old VMware SRM, for example, the ability to say, before I press the big giant green button, which could be a red button, if I make everything explode, can I actually test and simulate this before I do it, and actually make sure it looks like it's going to work. So some pretty useful stuff in there. So in terms of how you use the tool, you basically go and identify all the resources that you want to pull. You do a prep process, and then you push the green button after you've done the testing, evaluation. So in terms of the UX, it looks pretty much like any other kind of Azure capability. You can, from memory, you can actually access it using command line or the portal, and also through SDK API side of things if you want to do some super clever automation over the top of it. But that's, there's different experiences available depending on how you like to work. Now, this is kind of super important detail. What's actually supported in the tool? So you can see here, it's kind of the basic stuff for IaaS. It's not lots of PaaS stuff. So I won't read through all that, but it really is, the basics of Azure, the foundational stuff that you'd really expect to be supported for a first release of a tool like this. The good news is, if all the other stuff isn't supported, there is excellent documentation on our website, which actually talks through if you want to move these different things, this is what it looks like. There's no shortage of advice, but it's obviously way better if we can just provide you with an awesome tool that makes it easier. Some of the things that weren't in the public preview that have been included in the GA release back in March. So previously you had to do sort of like a tiered dependency identification. Now it will actually do the whole sort of modeled out experience across dependencies, encrypted disks, customer managed key VMs if using Key Vault. Also, we actually do some monitoring around the VM replication in the prepare phase before you actually sort of, cut over and migrate. The ability to actually go, well, I've moved it all. I'd rather not pay twice for everything. Can you help me, remove and delete and clean up the resources out of the source environment? That's been baked in as well. And there's also built into the tool itself is the ability to sort of liaise back and forth with the product group and go, hey, this isn't working, or why is it like this, or I should be able to do this. There's also I think it's recognition that it's an early release tool. Been baked in. From a roadmap perspective, some handy stuff here. I can't remember what the heck mooncake is, to be honest. It's one of our internal code names, but it sounds weird. I mean, capacity constraints, I suppose if you put policy limits, consumption limits into the target environment, which could interfere with your migration, then yeah, that could be a factor there. And I think, if we do have things like, during the pandemic, we did hit capacity constraints. We had massive expansion and use of our services. I think having some intelligence in there, that's been baked in. Yep. Okay, that's an interesting thing. There's also, this is region to region or geo to geo. But I think what we're also looking to do is say this should be able to support moves of resources from one subscription to another subscription, which at the moment is a bit painful, right? It can be. So that's a logical extension, but not as important as this region to region scenario that customers are dealing with now. Yep. And then you look at the actual Azure services we've got in here. The ones over at the left, those are ones that we were targeting to get done this half, but there's not much of this half left. So there's quite a heap of stuff there, but you can see it moves up through all the the container side of things, API management, Azure Monitor, app services, and then there's a whole raft of stuff which I think we'll be looking to deliver through next year. So the good news is there's a massive other services which we're going to bake into the tool, and I think there's a reasonable expectation that this whole set of services will be available in Resource Mover before the region opens in early 2023. So hopefully that's been useful. Just a reminder about, if you've got larger environments, there is product group support. Yep, and when we're talking about this with customers, of course, we've mentioned and called out partners in here. This shouldn't be something which customers are dealing with alone. That we'll be working alongside yourselves to help customers execute these migrations and bring things home.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Peter. We have a question in the chat from, I apologize for my pronunciation, from Hemant. He says, he or she or they say, if you have older app service plans, do you know if you would be able to move them to a current app service plan with Resource Mover, or do you need to do that first before moving?
I can't say. That's a good question. I'd speak to one of our CSAs about this, I would say. be a good question. Yeah, if you've got sort of legacy services, are those going to be available in a net new region?
Awesome. Or followed up with some resources. But I'll hand it over to Roseann. But thank you so much, Peter, for your time today.
No worries. Happy to help. And it's really good tooling, and I think it's just going to get better and better over the next year. So by the time we're needing to use it in anger, when NZ North hits, it's going to be really fully featured,
Awesome.
Which is cool. All right, cheers, guys.
Thank you. Kia ora, Roseann. I know you're a little bit sick, but hopefully you are able to go through your content quite quickly. And for any questions that may come, we can follow up later.
Kia ora koutou, ko Roseann taku ingoa. I'm happy to be here today, and yeah, I've got a bit of a head cold, so do that now. So I'm the New Zealand and APAC lead for Microsoft's Sustainability Connected Community. And I also have a day job at Microsoft as a account delivery executive for Microsoft Consulting Services. So yeah, thanks for having me here today to talk about our sustainability calculator. What I will do is just do like a helicopter view, and I will first of all just give you an overview of our sustainability commitments. So last year we announced that we would be carbon negative, water positive, and zero waste by 2030, and that we would build a planetary computer to better monitor, model, and manage the world's ecosystems and protect more land than we use, and ultimately move Microsoft's historical carbon footprint, or remove all of Microsoft's historical carbon footprint, I should say, by 2050. And why? Because the science on climate change is clear that the world must reach net zero emissions. And we recognise that our business has an impact on our environment, from the energy that we use in data centres to the materials that we use in our products and the packaging of our products. We also understand that we need to improve our operations to minimise our impact on the environment and to protect our natural resources for generations to come. So last year we published our first sustainability report, which is Microsoft being transparent on our progress. It's a report card on our progress to date, and it includes our plans and progress, such as our shift to 100% supply of renewable energy by 2025, what we have done, what we are doing to reduce our carbon emissions by 50%, and things like moving to electrifying our fleet on campuses, and our progress on being water positive and zero waste. I will share a link on this for those of you that are interested later in this deck. We also committed a $1 billion climate innovation fund over the next 4 years through our AI for Earth program, which is to expand access to capital to help those accelerate the global development of carbon reduction, capture and removal technologies, which will be required to help us enable us to achieve our goals. So our goal here is to share and extend our learnings that we are doing with environmental sustainability and using our technologies to help our customers and partners. So one initiative and a hero product of ours is the Sustainability Calculator. The goal is to provide Microsoft Enterprise customers with transparency into the carbon emissions associated with their own cloud usage using our IT infrastructure. And the good news is there is an immediate benefit of reducing carbon emissions for customers who are already in or are considering moving to the Microsoft Cloud. And so the value to businesses, it shows IT professionals the carbon benefits of migrating to the cloud. It illustrates emission savings compared with running the same services in a customer's own private data centre. It gives sustainability professionals data for greenhouse gas reporting, and typically they are most interested in our scopes 1 and 2, while we show all 3, which for those that are interested in and need to report all 3. And some of this may be a little bit foreign when I talk about carbon emissions in scopes 1, 2 and 3. So scope 1 is the direct emissions that our activities create, such as the diesel backup generators. Scope 2 is procured energy, indirect emissions that are mostly energy related. They come from production of energy, think heating and cooling. And then scope 3 are our supply chain emissions. So these are indirect emissions from activities engaged in the supply chain, such as materials and buildings and employee business travel. So Microsoft scopes 1 and 2 carbon emissions are reported as our customers' scope 3, since we are part of our customer supply chain. So the third graph to the right there shows carbon intensity over time. This will reduce as we implement our sustainability initiatives, such as renewable energy and electrifying our fleet and all the other initiatives that we have that are too numerous to go through. The carbon accounting methodology that's been used behind the sustainability calculator has been audited and approved, and it's available for you again to look at in a white paper that I've linked into this deck. We engaged external experts to conduct a study comparing the Microsoft Cloud with traditional enterprise data center deployments. And the results show that the Microsoft Cloud delivers impressive sustainability benefits. It compares energy consumption and carbon emissions of 4 applications in the Microsoft Cloud with on-premise equivalents. And these are Azure Compute, Azure Storage, Exchange Online, and SharePoint Online. We selected these cloud applications as they together account for about half of the energy consumed in Microsoft data centers. And to gain as full and accurate a picture as possible, the study considers the full life cycle of the computing scenarios, from manufacturing to end-of-life disposal. So the results show that the Microsoft Cloud is between 22 and 93% more energy efficient than traditional enterprise data centers, depending on the specific comparison being made. And then when taking into consideration our renewable energy purchases, the Microsoft Cloud is between 72 and 98% more carbon efficient. And these savings are attributable to 4 key features of the Microsoft Cloud: IT operational efficiency, IT equipment efficiency, data center infrastructure efficiency, and renewable electricity. So our roadmap for the tool: last year we released our first sustainability calculator, and that was it only contained really scopes 1 and 2 cloud emissions. We have since released in June 2020, and it's under private preview, so it's been out for some time. It's fairly stable. It also includes scopes 3, and we recommend that you use this app. It is an app with a leaf when you download it from the App Store. There's a difference between the two. The first one is a calculator and the second one has a leaf. So we've got more features being released to the public preview app. So in late June, we'll include a forecasting tool. So that will tell customers what their emissions and savings will be, and when and if, or if and when they move to Azure, and a further platform upgrade, and it will include M365 metrics that will then be added in July. So the timing for customer conversations is perfect, really. So with our data centre and our Prime Minister declaring a climate emergency last year, when she did this, she signalled 2 things. One, that our little country was prepared to take a leadership position, and secondly, that it was important to get our house in order and that we must reduce our carbon emissions. So following this, the government announced a major initiative to measure and publicly report on their emissions and to offset any that they can't cut by 2025. So the Microsoft Sustainability Calculator will help inform customers, government departments and agencies, including DHBs and tertiary institutions, will help them inform their Scope 3 emissions of workloads that they move into Azure. So as promised, the links that I've included into this pack are a link to the Microsoft Sustainability Calculator, some help and support guide and frequently asked questions, the carbon savings white paper, and the methodology behind the sustainability calculator. And that's all I wanted to share today. I could there's going to be a training pack that we'll put together later about how to use it, how to connect to it, and how to understand it. But at the moment, you can download this sustainability calculator. It comes with some mock data that you can have a play with, and yeah, go for your life.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I know you have a cold, so we'll let you rest up. But if anyone has any questions, please pass them on to me, and we'll contact Roseann at a later date.
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye. Awesome. Now we have Jared up from Mobile Mentor.
Yeah, here I am. You guys hear me all right?
All good. Hey, Jared.
Hey, Jared, we can indeed. And I just want to do a quick shout out to you. Guys, for most people on the call here, hopefully you remember Jared used to work at Microsoft. And he was the person that actually started these monthly partner webinars. I can't remember how far back it was, Jared, but it was a long time ago. So it's great to have you back and on the other side.
Yeah, it must have been early 2016 or something like that. And I must say, I'm glad to see that after 5 years, this monthly cadence is still continuing. And you're still the last Wednesday of every month. We decided back then to go with that date, and you're sticking with it. So it's awesome.
Awesome.
I think we've been through a few different changes over the years, but yeah, we're still trying to be consistent, and we've got a few stalwarts that keep joining every month. So shout out to all the folk that keep coming as well.
Yeah. Can you guys see my screen all right?
Oh, I think you're on mute, Paul.
Right. We can just see the thank you from the last slide at the moment. Jared, if you want to, we can stop sharing. If you want to start sharing your screen, go for it.
Okay. Here we go. All right, can you guys see that now?
Yeah, cool.
Okay, cool. So I am happy to say that it's almost 4 years now since I left Microsoft, but what I've learned is that my passion for Microsoft did not leave me when I left the company. In fact, if anything, it's probably just become more enhanced over the last 4 years. And the prior 17, it was all great, you know, largely working with the partner channel. I've really enjoyed getting stuck in with end customers and being in customer-facing sales roles. But my DNA, I guess you just can't take the partner ethos out of me, because I still think about partner on a daily basis. So I started at Mobile Mentor last November, just before Thanksgiving, US time. And just so you guys know a little bit about Mobile Mentor, we have 3 offices headquartered here in Auckland. In fact, I'm up here on the 9th floor of our Queen Street office, which is looking down Shortland Street. Right there, you guys can come for a visit anytime that you want. We've got an office in Wellington. Overall, about 65 staff, including people home-based in Sydney, Adelaide, Melbourne, and we have an office up in Nashville, Tennessee, where our founder, Dennis O'Shea, has been since, well, it's been about 3 or 4 years now. He's set up a really strong practice up there and gotten really close to Microsoft in the US subsidiary. So we're going from strength to strength, and I've been asked to speak a little bit about my perspective on partnering. So I'll give you my perspective now that I'm outside Microsoft proper. I'll start by giving you a few insights around why to partner, some of the learnings I've taken being outside of Microsoft, and then I'll tell you a little bit about Mobile Mentor and the sorts of partners that we're working with now to finish off. So I've got a little guide on the right. We'll kind of get to some of that stuff later, telling about what Mobile Mentor does. In case you guys are interested, I've got a one-pager that I can give to you. So why partner? My experience is that it really does allow you to leverage complementary strengths, all for the benefit of the customer. And if you do that properly, it does allow you to play at times in areas where you otherwise might not play. It definitely is expensive to be a specialist. Mobile Mentor, we're quite specialized around MDM, modern device management and security. And we've got a lot of engineering expertise in this area. I guess if you have critical mass, you can do that. But it's also helpful that we're not trying to be everything to everybody, because that would be also quite expensive. And we'd have to have a lot of resources for that. So by partnering, it would allow you to gain access to skills, capability, and sometimes capacity where you might already have the capability without incurring the cost of that specialization and all the certifications that are required. I also noticed that it allows us to offer a more complete service to the customer and allows you to have the umbrella conversations across the board, not just in your area of expertise, because you can bring in those resources that are not your own. I've definitely noticed that partnering allows us to be competitive in the market against players that are much bigger than us. And if you get, 2 or 3 of the small guys, each specializing, but banding together, you can play in areas and in RFPs where you heretofore might not have been able to be competitive, where you would have been locked out. But bringing in the extra expertise can be a major help in areas like that. My tips for partnering. Number 1, you have to truly live the partner ethos, where you definitely have to believe we are better together than we are by ourselves. If it's kind of a happenstance thing and it just gets cobbled together by coincidence when the opportunity happens to arise, yeah, you might get some partnering done, but it will be a bit fly by night. It will be opportunistic. If you want to partner permanently, you must have strategies for it and be reaching out and just imprint that DNA into your mind. Next, and this is particularly helpful for me, I've noticed in numerous conversations since I joined in November that our sticking to our lane, if you will, or knowing where we play is super useful. It helps the partners that I'm speaking to have confidence that we are not there to compete with them. We are not there to eat their lunch, and we're not going to come in as a specialist with a Trojan horse mentality and then take away their customer from them as part of that deal behind the scenes. So not everybody is obviously as specialized as Mobile Mentor is, but even if you're not a specialist, when you partner, if you can, in those instances, carve out where you will play with clarity and make sure that the partner knows where each of you play, it just makes it that much easier. It does require that you are comfortable with a bit more transparency than you otherwise might be when you navigate and orient your way around the market. It means that you sometimes have to open the kimono a little bit, which requires trust. And it is a small market, New Zealand. How many partners now, Paul, you'll probably know, but back in the day, it was around 2,000 or so in the Microsoft ecosystem.
Well, it does keep going. It does keep
going
up. It does keep going up, but the main ones are still the key, 80-20 rule almost.
Okay. So managed partner back in the day was about 100. You do have to learn to trust the partners that you're working with. I really advocate partnering generally when I'm out talking with customers, and I have kind of a friendly advocacy of any partner. It doesn't matter who they are, even my competition. If I know that they do good work, I acknowledge that. I think customers like to know that you have confidence in other players in the market. They like to hear it from you. And when they hear you being honest about other great competencies in the market that may not be your own, it just bodes well for the customer's level of trust in partnership as well. It requires commercial clarity, whether you're passing through margin, whether it's just rebate based, or whether you're just kind of banding together gentlemen's agreement around an RFP of some kind. You definitely have to be clear. And finally, this last point, I've made some miscalculations since arriving. I made some preconceived assumptions that certain partners would likely not be interested in working with us. But there's only been one partner in all of my, whatever it's been, 7 months so far that I've spoken to, who has not expressed some interest in at least entertaining the idea of working with us. What that tells me is that you've got partners who you may think they have the capability, and in most circumstances, they even may have the capability, but it doesn't mean they have the capacity. And they're often willing to work with another partner to bring in scale where they can't ramp up quite as quickly. So those are some of the tips. Now, let me tell you a little bit about where Mobile Mentor plays, and I'm sure Paul and Isaac, you'll be doing some of these webinars, and you'll be bringing other partners in. So in the spirit of learning about who else is out there in the market, here's a couple of slides on Mobile Mentor. We are basically everything Intune, Intune, Intune. It's our specialty. It's where we play really well. We believe that you can use Intune across not just your Microsoft devices, but how we pitch it is you can use Intune for the entire endpoint ecosystem. You can use it for your Windows 10 laptops. You can use it for your iOS handsets. You can use it with your Android devices. Yes, you can even use it with Mac. Does it give you everything that Jamf does? No, but it's consistently getting there. And all of us who are Microsoft partners know that even if Microsoft isn't winning in the first instance, they keep plugging away, and it gets better and better. I don't know what the latest market share numbers are for Intune. It was between 30 and 35%, but I'm super confident that Microsoft is going to be 70, 80% plus in a couple of years' time with Intune. So we are pitching Intune as the product for modern management across all of the players that you see on the screen. Basically all devices. Do customers have other MDMs that they're using? Yes, they do. What is Mobile Mentor doing with our customers that are not using Intune? I'll tell you what we're doing. We are migrating. And if they're not ready to migrate right now, we're at least having those conversations. Whether it's AirWatch, Workspace ONE from VMware, whether it's Mobile Iron, whether it's Jamf, we can read the tarot cards, the writing on the wall, and we are talking about Intune at every single opportunity. And truth be told, I, as the sales lead in New Zealand, I am not compensated on anything but Microsoft, and everything we do with Microsoft has to do with Intune. So it sits very near and dear to my heart. As far as how we tend to pitch in the marketplace, we think about modern management with 6 key areas of focus, those being zero trust, if you will, 6 key pillars: passwordless authentication, zero trust provisioning, cloud data, over-the-air updates, and remote support. We wrap all of that up into our engagements and workshops around the 2 uber pillars of endpoint security and employee experience. And although we don't do Teams, although we don't do Power BI, we don't do ERP and CRM and all the other bits that aren't somehow related to Intune, we definitely talk about them, and we take an umbrella approach. And I very happily bring in other partners to our customers who can handle off those other parts of the business. So I wanted to give you 6 quick examples without names, but just with partner types of organizations that we are working with right now in Mobile Mentor in New Zealand. A great matchup is a licensing partner like an LSP together with Mobile Mentor as the modern device management specialist. A hardware reseller who wants to sell the hardware, but they don't really want to manage it. It's a perfect scenario, partnering up with Mobile Mentor. Let us handle what you don't want to do. A data migration specialist, somebody who might be doing SharePoint or SharePoint migration. We sure don't do that. It's not our forte, but partner up with us. Once the data has been migrated, we can make sure that access to that data on the right devices is modernized and secure. An app developer who has a lot of ISV chops in building apps. Those apps have to go on a device, but they don't want to manage that device. They don't want to have to keep it secure. Come to us. That's a great partnership for the likes of Mobile Mentor. SMB resellers. I've had several discussions with mid-market or small business partners who are generally jacks of all trade. They don't have enough people to be able to make them all Intune experts. So they come to us, we partner very friendly, very nicely with them, and allow them to compete with the big guys in areas where they otherwise might not be as strong. And you can even think of the do-it-yourself IT departments of your customer as a partner as well. And we do a lot of partnering, trying to make the IT department the hero. Sometimes we do managed service, where we kind of take all the management off their hands. Other times they run with it, and we have a service called Intune support, where they can phone a friend when their skill set taps out, when they've kind of gone beyond what they can do. They can ring Mobile Mentor. We'll help you with those more gnarly types of questions. Now, my last slide is some thoughts on partnering with Microsoft, having been there 17 years and now 4 years outside. One thing that we have done, which you might consider, and this became especially useful when we were trying to venture into the US market. So any of you trying to go beyond New Zealand, where you probably know, Paul and Matt Bostwick and Carol Brown and all of the main players from Microsoft in New Zealand, you know them. But who do you know up in the States? There are thousands of AEs and ATSs and PDMs. So we built a Microsoft-only web page on our mobilementor.com website. You can't link to it other than just going directly to the URL, but it is our pitch to Microsoft so that the people, the AEs and ATSs, especially in the US, but in Australia as well, and to some extent in New Zealand, they can go to that page and find out in their own vernacular what Mobile Mentor is doing. A critical piece in working with Microsoft is making sure that your AppSource presence on the AppSource store and portal is up to speed. We are not traditionally a licensing partner. We do primarily professional services, but you can put professional services up as a package service on AppSource. We have more than just the 8 that are listed there. I think we might have even up to 10 or 12. Use that so that Microsoft's customers, when they're searching, can find you. The next tip I have is make sure that your collateral is nicely co-branded, that you're availing yourselves of all of the MDF opportunities, using your co-op rebate dollars, making sure that you know how Microsoft likes to pitch to the market, learning the terms, and then speaking to the customer in that sort of a way. So case studies and the like, really important for us. And it helps us also, by the way, to catch the eye of people at Microsoft, which is our last tip. We love to have internal Microsoft advocates. So you can see one of the videos down there is Ben Brown. When we've done good work with Microsoft and somebody inside Microsoft is happy with what we've done, we build a case study with them internal to Microsoft. We don't put it out there to customers. This is Microsoft rep to Microsoft rep, explaining why it's helpful to speak with, and work with Microsoft. You can see this guy, Chuck Jones, who's an ATS up in the US, talking about how he feels about working with Mobile Mentor. So we'll continue doing this. And of course, everything else that's associated with trying to build your brand within Microsoft and submitting for partner awards and all of that, and attending Inspire if it's ever in person again, that all goes hand in hand with that as well. So those are my tips to you, my thoughts about partnering, and a few ideas on partnering with Microsoft. And I must say, it's fantastic to be part of the community. And with that, I'll stop.
Thank you so much, Jared. Awesome. If anyone has any questions for Jared or anyone that we've covered today, please feel free to type away in the chat. Otherwise, we really appreciate everyone logging in. And we know over the next few months that there will be a number of exciting and new events and initiatives that will be coming out. So do keep in tune with the partner, all our different channels, but especially the New Zealand partner Yammer. Is there anything from you, Paul, before we sign off today?
Oh, hey guys, I'm actually in a hotel room in Wellington. Excited to be doing some events tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I'm scratching my head in the background thinking, how can we recreate the P-Seller program, I think it was. Jared, you're an absolute flag bearer for Microsoft. I want to thank you for helping promote our products, including to our partners and our technology. So that was awesome. Yeah.
You're welcome, mate.
Awesome. Well, I think I'll give everyone time back today. Thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate everyone that comes and is a regular attendee or not. So have a good afternoon and enjoy the rest of your week.
Cool, thank
Cool,
you.
thank you.
See ya.
Thanks
Bye.
all.
Bye.